Hi everybody, this is Maureen Wong for Your Next Stamp. We've gotten several requests for me to do a video on how I color black hair using Copic markers, so I'm going to show that to you today. Please forgive me for turning my paper a lot. There's a certain way I like to color. That means I like to have my strokes coming towards me instead of going away from me, so I'll always turn my paper so that my strokes are coming toward me. So that's going to mean a lot of turning of the paper as I color, so I hope that doesn't make you dizzy or nauseous. The other thing is I've already colored in her face, and that's one of my tips, is that if you have a portion that you're worried the black ink will bleed into, I would actually suggest coloring that beforehand. The Copic marker ink in that area tends to repel more Copic ink later on, just a teeny bit, and I find that it does help with the black not bleeding into those different areas. So I could have gone ahead and colored her crown in too, but I'm not as worried about that right now, and that is my second tip. If you have something in the hair of the person that you're coloring, a lot of times what I will do is just color right over it as if it's not there, and then I'll stamp it again on another sheet of cardstock, color it, cut it out, and layer it on top, either flat or with foam dots or whatever you use to add dimension to your cards. And that way it's really, really easy to color. You're not worrying about coloring around an object. Your shadows may get a little bit off because you're coloring as if there's nothing there, but all you have to do is go back in afterwards and add more shadows. But today I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to color over the crown. I'm going to just color around it, so you can see how I do that too. And so let's get started. To start off, I'm using C3, and I work from lightest to darkest, and then I'll go back in and fill in with my medium shade, and some people work from dark to light. It's all up to you how you want to do it, but I do mine this way, so I'll show you my method. Okay, just starting at the top right underneath. I'm going to do this in sections. I'm doing quick downward strokes. As I said, I always like my strokes coming toward me. And I'm extending these strokes pretty far down. Because this is the lightest color I'm going to be using. I don't really like stark white highlights in my hair, so I usually use C3 as my base, and that means that I have a little bit of gray showing as a highlight, but when you put all the black colors next to it, you won't even notice that it looks gray. It won't look gray, it'll still look white, but it definitely is different from the stark white of the paper. So I've just gone in and done this front section, quick strokes towards me, flicking motions. I'm sure you've heard this before. You use flicking motions so that the ends of your strokes kind of taper off. Let me zoom in just a little bit more. I don't want my hands to get in the way, but I want you to be able to see it. And this is a really light color, so it's probably going to be hard to see. So you can see I've put the highlights here through her bangs, and then on the sides I've done it a little bit further up. Usually it's going to be in sort of a curve, how the highlights hit the hair, because the head is curved. The highlight's going to be curved also. Sorry about that, I was out of frame. Okay, next I'm going to come in with my C5, which is my next darkest color. And I'm going to do the same flicking strokes. This time I'm not going to go quite as far down as I did with the C3. And with each progressive color, you're going to do that shorter stroke so that you're not going as far down into your highlight. And please excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I haven't been doing Copic coloring in a while, so I'm a little afraid of screwing up right now. By the way, this little section of her hair is sort of exempt from the highlights that I've been doing, so I'm just going to color that in whole. If you wanted to do a highlight in there, you could. I'm not doing one today, though. Now I'm coming in with my C7, and this is really the same process over and over again. The only difference is that you're using a darker color each time, and you're making your strokes a little bit shorter. Sometimes, though, I like to extend some of my darker color out because otherwise you just have this lump of white highlight. You don't want a solid block of highlight. That looks unnatural. You want it to be a little bit piecey. So you can add your darker color in there sometimes, extending a little bit further out into the highlight. Sorry, I'm rushing. I gotta stop rushing, otherwise I'm gonna get black all over her face. That's another thing about Copic coloring, is just take your time and it'll all work out in the end. Now C9 is actually my darkest color. I don't use black in her hair, although you could if you wanted it to be really dark, but for me the C9 is dark enough that that is my darkest color. At this point, she has so much color in her hair. You might think the paper is getting oversaturated, and it kind of is, but it's not a really big deal. So you just have to put a very little bit of this darkest color, the C9. Sorry, this is what I mean about turning the paper. I like to turn the paper so that my strokes are always coming toward me, and I work whatever I think looks good and needs working on. I work on that at the moment. I don't necessarily go in order, so that's why I'm turning my paper a lot. And you can see in this area my highlight is a little bit too chunky big, so what I'm going to do is come back with my C5 and extend my strokes down just a little bit. I actually want this highlight to be higher, so I'm going to extend my bottom strokes up a little bit more. And there, that looks better. And actually on this side now, I think the dark highlight doesn't come up, or the dark color doesn't come up high enough as compared to the other side. So I'm gonna come in, this is my C7, and raise up that just a little bit, and then come in with my C5, and now the highlights match a little bit better across the head. Okay, now that I'm finished with that section, I'm going to go to the back of her hair, which I assume is up in a ponytail, that's why it's that shape. So I want my highlights to be kind of high on her hair, because they would be hitting her hair at the top of her head, like around here and here. So I'm going to do very little strokes up at the top of her head and do more at the bottom. And the tips of her hair are really up to you. If you want to leave them with a little highlight, they might be highlighted because they're up like that. So if you want to leave a highlight at the tips of the hair, go ahead and do that. I'm going to extend this color towards the top, and then from the middle coming out. Now for our C5. Whoops, sorry about that, that spun away from me. Okay, and that's it for my C5 for now. Come back in with my C7. And of course, these are just my preferred colors for doing black hair. You can pick different grays, like the toner grays or the neutrals. It's really up to you, or if you want to use something completely different. But I like the look of the cool grays the best, so that's what I tend to use every time I do black hair. Okay, and finally the C9. And just like before, we need very little of this color. It's really dark. And finally around here. And, oops, out of frame again. Sorry about that. My highlight does look a little bit chunky, so I'm going to come in with my C5 and bring it out just a little bit. And you can see I actually did some strokes away from me, which I don't normally do, but for small little touch-ups like this, then it doesn't really matter too much to me. And that is the finished product. I hope that helped some of you out, and please go check out yournextstamp.com for this stamp. Oh, I forgot to tell you, this is Party Fiona. Oops, I got a little smudge on her face. This is Party Fiona, and she's available in rubber. Let me zoom out so you can see her. From yournextstamp.com, she was stamped in Memento black ink on Georgia Pacific white cardstock. And just a quick little note, I use Georgia Pacific cardstock, that cheapy stuff from Walmart, all the time with my Copics. People say you get better results from better paper, and I haven't really tried a lot of expensive papers just because I'm too cheap for that. Using the Georgia Pacific paper makes me less afraid of screwing up. If I mess up, then, you know, I can throw it away and it's not really a big deal. But if I was using expensive paper, I'd be much more scared to mess it up. And I think being scared can sometimes hinder the creative process. So I just stick with the Georgia Pacific cardstock. As I was saying, please go to yournextstamp.com to check this stamp out and all the other stamps, dies, and products that we have for you. Thank you very much for watching.